How are you doing today, Bob?
Doing A-okay. David, how are you?
I'm good, and I'm really interested in talking to you about this project. Ever since you told me about it, I thought it was amazing. And I think I'm just going to let you quickly tell me generally what you're doing. And yeah, go ahead. It's very interesting.
Sure, yeah. So my father was a musician and I followed kind of in his footsteps as well, different genres and stuff. But we always meant to record a bunch of his original music from when he was a youngster in my studio. We never got to it. In a nutshell, he passed away, and then he had some recording of all his songs just from a mic with a guitar and him singing. So I took that, did what I could to it on my recording gear, and then I've kind of added all the instruments and made this album, this CD.
So he was a musician when you were growing up.
Yes,
And so what year are you born in?
67.
And he left the family in 1970.
Yes, sir.
And how long did you see him on a regular basis?
No, not for the first few years. I think by the time around 6 and 7, I started seeing him more regularly. But from that point in time, I think that's when he was out and about touring and stuff.
And he left. Why did he leave?
Well, when I was growing up and until actually 2 years ago, I always thought that my mom kicked his lazy butt out the door. But no, it turned out he had left us, my older sister and my younger brother and my mother in 1970, um, to go play music and only music. Never sent money, never. But that's okay. The story's not about that. But that was who he was at that point in time. And
Yeah.
but he
Well,
made it for himself in Ontario,
people live the lives they feel they need to lead, and in many ways, there's sort of no point in crucifying people for it.
No,
They make the
especially after
decisions they make. Sorry, what's that?
especially after they pass.
Yeah, yeah. So he left to make music. He wanted to be a musician, a full-time musician living on the road. And was it, and that's primarily why he left.
From my understanding, yes.
Yeah. And so then you didn't see him for a few years, and then, and where were you living at the time?
We stayed in the house that mom and dad had. They bought when I was 6 months old, and she worked and went to school part time and raised us.
Is this
It
in
was
Midland?
no, this is in Hamilton,
In,
home of the
in
Ticats, home of the
right,
Ti- which was dad's bet. That's dad's favorite team, and that's why we're all Ticat fans too.
and
Husky away!
and how old were you when you left Hamilton?
Oh, geez, the first time I've been back and forth a couple of times, but I was there like a big part of my life till 17 was the first time I left. I moved up to Penetang. My
Okay.
dad was living up there at this point in time. I had finished, well, not finished high school. I dropped out of high school young and I was working quite a bit, making lots of money and playing and learning how to play with all my friends. That's what we did back then. You know, some kids would just play games on board games and little games like this. We were playing instruments. Buddy picked that up, I picked that up. We just learned together.
So you had a lot of kids in the neighborhood who were playing instruments.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. And then we found people outside of the neighborhood. It was just like it's all we did. Well, I mean, we did go on our bikes and we did outdoor stuff, but we just learned how to play together.
So your father leaves when you're 3, and you start to see him. Like, are those your first memories when you start to see him later when he's 7 and 8?
Um, maybe 6. I may have, dropped by once or twice between those years, but never went anywhere.
And your feeling the whole time was your understanding was it's because the marriage had broken down and your mother
No,
asked
at
him to
that
leave.
time I had no idea why. It wasn't until I was probably once she started coming around again and started thinking about it. Because what life goes on, and my mother met someone, and what life goes on, right? Um, I was 3 years old. What was I knowing? But I knew that there was my father that played, and also my mom's father, grandfather, my mom's mother. He was a violinist. I should say a fiddle player. But yeah, you know what? We were just going along playing music.
And do you remember how you felt about say you're like around 10 years old or something like that, and this has been going on now for a number of years. Like you say, your mother might be seeing someone else, and so what's your view of your father growing up, like sort of your late childhood and into your teens?
Well, that's the funny thing because I really didn't get the idea that he had left for any reason or at that point in time. I had been looking up to him all this time. I saw him on TV. God, I must have been 6 or 7 years old. He was
Where
playing
did you?
guitar. You know how old like back then? That's the 70s. Like just to be on TV, that's a big thing. Now it's easy to do,
What was he doing on TV?
playing guitar and singing
With by himself or with a
by
band?
himself. Yeah, he was a solo artist. Yeah. He had a couple of
And,
bands he played with over the years, he said, but he did most of all his gigs solo.
and did he record any albums?
He got published by Sony for one song, and if you look at this album right here, It's Only Make Believe, Ricky Diamond. He was a very large Canadian country act back in the day in the
Okay.
70s. And one of Dad's songs that he wrote called I Want to Hold You is on that album. And that's like the album, right? Like that's
Right.
back in the day. See, it's even got the sleeve.
Is your dad's name mentioned anywhere in the album?
Oh yeah, it's on the back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So you see him on TV, and how do you? I mean,
Oh,
I
I
know it's a
looked,
long.
I was like, fuck, I can't believe that. That's my dad. And meanwhile, like, I'm really interested in music. When I was 5, my sister got an organ for Christmas. She had no interest in it. I picked it up right away. And by next Christmas, I was doing the Christmas concert at school at the age of
Wow.
6. And that's kind of where it started. And then I just started like, whenever I come across an instrument, I'd just grab it and I'd play it. It was like, fuck, wow. People go, how do you play that? I don't know. I just know how to do it.
How
You know.
many? How many? I see a lot of instruments back there. What do you play?
Yeah. Well, I don't have a cello, and that's the most recent instrument I learned how to play a few years ago. I've been looking for a good deal on one. I had rented one while I was trying to learn it or learning it. So I guess I play six instruments and sing.
God.
Yeah.
And you're known primarily as a drummer.
Nope. No, I'm most proficient as a drummer, but there are certain pockets of um, people that know my career and know my music that would think of me, yeah, just as a drummer. But that's when
Yes.
I was very young. By the time I was 27 years old, well, even when I was 19, I was writing. I had my own bands, and they were playing my music. I just couldn't sing back then. So
Okay.
my primary thing is writing songs and arranging songs, right?
So your father, it sounds like. I mean, it's a musical family. There's music around. There's music in the kids in the neighborhood. So I'm thinking that you're looking up to your father.
I am, yes. Yep. At that point in time, I was, yeah. I had
So
no
and
negative thoughts of him ever. Not at
so
that
he's
point.
doing cool stuff, and he's on TV, and you're 10 or 12 years old. I can see that being a
That's it.
pretty
Because I
powerful
got to
thing.
tell you, like my mom never talked down about him. Like, he's your father. Yes, that's it. You
That's
know.
good.
And so yeah, I was fortunate that way, I guess.
And how did your so he's you see him occasionally on television or his band's coming through or he's coming through. And what was your relationship with him as you were sort of growing up and into your teenage years?
Well, I would go. Well, they lived in Perth, Ontario, so I would go and visit. I even took the train out there, the bus sometimes. Um, Yeah, no, and his stepson Don, me and him became very close over the years, and even his stepdaughter Kim, they're both my sister and my brother, right? And Don has since passed, and he plays bass on one of these songs. He's another story because he in his 50s learned how to play an instrument, play bass, and he's actually on one of these songs playing.
So although obviously at 3 years old that's a tough situation, but it sounds like the situation became pretty positive.
Oh yeah, you know what? My mom worked her tail off to make sure we didn't worry about anything. I didn't. I had no thoughts of it back then. wasn't until I got older and I realized what he had done, and I became a father, and then I really realized, like, holy hell, how could you do that to your kids?
Took you a
But
long time to
but
figure that
and
out.
then it took me years to realize, well, because he was doing what he had to do.
Yeah.
You know what? Because we all do what we have to do.
The process to go through that thinking process, I guess.
Well, it's been years of epiphanies, right? And
Yeah.
at the age we change and the way we look at things, we hear new things from other people. Well, most people do. I mean, a lot of people do, I guess. I do anyways. You know what? You learn new things as time goes on. And you know what? Every 10 years, you start to have a different outlook on things.
Well, I know that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you're not doing that, you're not learning, I think. So you're in your teenage years, you're playing music. He's being a musician, he's touring around, he's living in Perth. And you're seeing him on a regular basis. So he's in a touring band, like he's playing bars and things like that.
Well,
Is it most
so it was, I would say probably out about my age 12, maybe 11 is when he kind of stopped. He settled down and he opened up a little radiator shop in Perth. He met Kay, right? And settled down there with her
his
and
spouse?
with
Okay.
his second wife. They were married for 30 plus years. Um, yeah, so when he met her, he settled right down.
In the Perth area.
Yep. Well, right in Perth.
And so what are you doing at this point? You're pretty
Oh,
focused
I'm in
on music?
Hamilton, you know, going to high school, I guess, and well, a little even before that, I'm in middle school. But at that time, again, I'm jamming with everybody, and you know what, learning and meeting new people, going to school and living life and doing your thing, right?
And you become
And
a professional musician.
well, at the age of 15, I guess I had, yeah, that was my first paid gig.
And you spend a lot of time you spend time on the road traveling as a musician. Can you tell me
I
about
had,
that?
yes, yeah, I did some gigs in the States, all over, well, not all over Canada, but I've done some East Coast stuff, some Mid Coast, a lot of Ontario.
And who did you play with?
Oh, geez, it's a whole big fat list. But I guess the most prominent fellow I ever played with, and as a drummer, was with Wild Child Butler from Chicago. Although he was living in Windsor when I played with him, his wife
That,
was his wife was a Canadian girl, and she was the manager of his band too. So
so you
he learned how to play, great harmonica player. Oh, you know what? Just and the blues. He's a blues. He was an older blues guy, right?
yeah.
Uh, he's long gone, passed away now. But he learned from Howlin' Wolf, Willie Dixon. He jammed with those guys. He was a kid hanging out with them back in Alabama. That's where he grew up.
Wow.
So I got to play with him and learn a whole bunch of shit about the blues. We played at Buddy Guy's club in Chicago. You know what? I got to meet Buddy Guy. He had one girl on that arm, one girl on that arm. It was like, oh, that's mind you, he's
That,
a tall, handsome fella, right?
that's the life, I guess. But I
Yeah.
saw a video of where you were playing drums for him, and it looked like a pretty big crowd.
Yeah, that was the Vancouver Folk Festival, which is
Yeah,
the largest and longest running paid festival in all of North America.
that looked
So we
like a
were
stadium gig from the video that I saw.
right, but it was in Stanley Park, but it was a big outside gig, right? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, there were
huge,
thousands of people.
12,000 plus.
Yeah.
Yep. That
So,
was
so yeah, go ahead.
well, because not only did I play on that was the Friday night that we played just before the closer, and but the rest of the weekend, Saturday and the Sunday, we played two other gigs, about 5,000 people. They had all these different stages around the whole park, right? And there was about 6,000 people would go to see different and
Right.
acts all over the world, all over the world. And
So before we get into the project, just tell me the Torch story. I could tell it, but you tell it better. So how'd the
um,
name Torch come about? Your nickname is Torch.
it is, yes. My stage name is Torch, and my band is Torch and the Hot Coals. We were playing in Sarnia one night, and we were so when if you know anything about playing in a band, there's usually one or two guys that kind of get carried along with the better guys in the band. right?
Okay.
And that's good. It's just kind of how it works. And you're sometimes that not better guy, and you're learning from that, right? And but this band was each and every one of them was like the top notches. And we were playing this bar, 500-600 people, and it was packed. And they were all talking, and there was no music on. We were the music, but they didn't even know we were there. But we were playing particularly better than any time we've ever played before. And like we were totally pissed off. Like, what the fuck? We're playing the best ever, and we're the best players. Well, that afternoon, I had bought for the first time ever a Zippo lighter. So I had my Zippo lighter and my lighter fluid with me, right on stage with me, because at then I used to smoke, right? I was just always smoking. And I got it in my head. It's like, you know what? I'm going to put some lighter fluid on my cymbals. I'm going to light them on fire and see what happens. Well, it just fucking lit the whole place up. All of a sudden, 500-600 people know we're there. And for the next 2 hours, we country walked their ass to fucking home. And
Isn't that, the psychology of that? Isn't
there's
that's
no psychology
amazing.
of it. It's just freaking happened. Well, the
Yeah.
psychology and how it got frenzied up the crowd.
Yeah, yeah. How the
But
change
even
happened.
though, yeah, because you'd think to be there for the music, and especially we were so good. But anyways, so I kept doing that. And after a few weeks, the manager of the band, I remember her name is Sharon. She's a very particularly stern lady, but she'd be nice when she wanted something. So you learn that. Anyways, she just started calling me Torch, and then everybody else was calling me Torch. So you know what? That's why I got called.
Yeah. So how do things go between sort of in terms of the relationship with your father? So that's the life you're living, that's the life he's living, and you're on fairly good terms. You're seeing each other a few times a year, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And and so in terms of the project, tell me about how that came along. You said that you had talked to him about recording the songs that he'd written, but that never happened, and he passed away.
That's right. Yes. And you know what, we had always meant to do that because I got into recording and producing and stuff, and like it's like, oh, I got to do yours because he writes great. He's a great singer. I can't sing compared to him. I pale. Um, but it wasn't until I started working on this project, and I know I digressed, but when I realized how smart he is with words and with just little sayings. And then I realized, you know what? He gets a lot of that shit from his mother, my nana, who was a smart ass, the sauciest old lady you'll ever meet, but she had great one-liners. But dad seems how to say stuff in a certain way that's like, I would never have thought to say it that way. And you'll have to listen to the songs to get the example. Just listen to the words and listen to the lines, and you understand what I'm saying.
Well, he's got a classic sound, like just
Michigan, yep.
the timbre in his voice, the way he pronounces the words. He's the country music genre is really ingrained in him.
Oh yeah.
Like
You know, but
that's
the funny thing is when you listen to him singing, you've heard the songs. Um, that is just him with a shitty ass microphone and a recording CD player. That's all that is. And
and it's
I was able to capture that timbre of his voice, like you say, and to be able to hear the quality of it.
yeah.
It floors me that it was saved enough for me able to do that. And you know what? It made me so happy to do it.
So when were those recordings made of just him?
So it would have been probably 20 years ago
And he did that by himself. It didn't
by
those
himself.
record
Yes. And
and where
shortly before he died, he put out, well, he gave to all his family and friends this CD. And so I don't know if you can see that.
yeah, yes.
I think that's him playing at the Port McNichol, the old Port McNichol Tavern or something. So yeah, that was the CD's not in there, but
Right.
that's the back liner of it. So that
And
was, you know what, that's what he did. And
and so he did the demos 20 years ago. he aside from this CD, he didn't do any other recordings that you know of.
Not, no, no.
So when did you find out that these recordings were um, available?
Oh, he gave them to me when, like he gave it to all of us. He gave us this CD, and I was just using that. We were gonna like record some shit, right? We were gonna actually do it in my studio when I got some time. We never, and that's the shitty thing is I never got to the time before he died. But it wasn't until about 10 years after he passed away, a few years ago, that I realized I got this shit, man. I'm gonna see if I can, you know what, make his vocals and his guitar sound better, and add music to it. So I just dabbled in a couple of songs. Oh, this is pretty good. The way the recording is now, it's so easy to make shitty stuff sound good. And I'm not talking about like uh, you know, making stuff not what's real, but just cleaning it up. Because it's all real. It's raw and real, this album. There's no quantizing, there's no pitch control. You know what? You'll hear the flaws. The flaws are in there, but you will hear a whole bunch of really good singers and players playing at a really high level, um, being raw and real.
This is what the Beatles have done. They've
Well, I'm,
taken the old John Lennon demos
oh, right.
that
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah.
that sounded a lot
Yeah.
worse than what you had to work with. Like some of their stuff was,
Right.
it sounds like a very small cassette recorder beside the piano, and he's recording it just so he'll remember it, and he doesn't need a great quality of sound. But
That
then
song
he
was
has,
really good. They did great with that.
yeah,
Uh,
they've done
Impressed.
three, I think
Oh,
three or
have they?
four.
Oh, I've heard one. Huh.
I think when the anthology series came out, but it's the same thing. Like it's the same process of and the Smiths. I don't know if you know if you remember the
I do
Smiths
know them,
from
not
the
that much.
80s. No,
A little.
but so the way they would create music is the guitar player basically come up with a riff, and the singer would do everything else. And so
Okay.
it's not like sort of a typical kind of a band situation where it's an organic thing that's happening live in a room. This album that you've completed started 20 years ago, and that's kind of amazing. And so you first heard these songs when he issued that CD, is that right?
Yes. Well,
And
yeah. I mean, no, I had already heard the songs. He was always playing them. This was, in fact, when my dad played, and that's the funny thing about back to the 70s. Like this was the 70s. He played all his original songs. He played a whole bunch of covers, right? Like he was doing 4 sets a night, probably doing 50 songs a night, sometimes an afternoon matinee. But lots of his, I mean, I'd heard them many a times. In fact, I've sat and jammed on them many a times over the years, right? And even played some acoustic and bass with it over the years. It wasn't until, long after he passed away, I thought I'm just going to make it. And so I listened to, because I'm not like a traditional country guy, even though I love, like, I respect it, it stopped my music. So I would take his different songs and understand kind of the genre or the type of song it is, the time signature, the key, and everything, because that all has a thing on how it should be played and felt. So I listened to people like George Jones, Willie Nelson, Patsy Cline, and others to hear their interpretation of this feel of this song so that then I could take and play the instruments, while putting my own imaginative stuff in it. But I needed to know the way that went. Anyways, that's what I did.
I think you had a
If
lot to
that
work
makes
with.
sense.
It does. I think you had a lot to work with because I remember the first time you sent me a couple of songs. The thing that really struck me was how authentic he sounded
Mm,
as a country
yeah,
artist.
I
Like
agree.
he just had it in his bones.
Yep.
And there's not a lot of people that do that. There's a lot of people who do country music, and but he was like, I think, I mean, maybe you can tell me a little bit more about this, but I have a feeling that he knew a lot about the history of country music
Oh,
and the
yeah.
artists, and
Yep.
like he absorbed a lot of stuff because, like they
You know who
say
his
in
favorite drummer
music,
was? His
besides
favorite drummer
you?
was Gene Krupa.
Oh, well, yeah, in those days,
Oh, he
everybody
loved big
loved Gene
band.
Krupa.
Glenn Miller. Oh, he loved that shit. He had tons of albums from all that stuff in that era. But yeah,
Well,
you're right with the country but the jazz as well.
and so when did the idea come to take these songs and the idea to think, well, I can build a recording around this, I can put instruments to this, I can produce an album.
So about a year after Dad's death, which would have been like 15 years ago, um, I got the idea this is what I want to do. But we had moved to the cottage and I didn't have a studio set up yet. So I knew at some point I was going to do it. And then when I finally got a studio set up, my my analog gear was kind of giving me problems and out of date. My son said, "You know what? We should go digital." So I went digital. As soon as I did that, I knew, okay, I'm doing fucking Dad songs, man. Doing them. Now I did my own project first. I did my third Torch release before it, but I worked on Dad kind of in between projects along the way, right? Like I didn't just go boom, boom, boom. I worked on this album probably the last 6, 7 years.
It's the kind of thing I think it takes a lot of time to think about because it's not just like you're sitting down writing some songs, you can feel what you're doing, you know where it's going, you know what you want. This is like a totally different kind of creative process.
Well, yeah, and like I said earlier, I did a lot of research by listening to the genre of traditional country of different artists to get their interpretations of the type of songs that my dad wrote, so that I could, inject the traditional country shit in there. I didn't want any of my rock or metalness coming through, and it doesn't. You know what? The best thing that happened with this album is that I found Don McCowan to play steel. As soon as he started playing that steel slide guitar, it was like, okay, it's a country album now. And but he's not just slide. This guy's an amazing freaking talent. Oh, I wish I could play any instrument as good as that guy can play that instrument.
Is he mostly a country musician?
I don't really know. I don't know much about him. I just actually through another slide player who couldn't do the job, who had other obligations, gave me this guy's name, and I don't nothing about him except for his name and that I paid him $50 a song to play it.
He sure sounds like a guy who's got a lot of experience playing country music.
Oh, he knows his shit. Yeah, I
I
bet
mean,
he and he probably fucking played Pink Floyd, man. Can you imagine that stuff that David Gilmour used to do, or like Steely Dan stuff? Oh, you know what? This guy's good.
anybody can play country music, but to really to play it very well and to make it sound authentic, I think is a hard thing to do, especially the older kind of country. But
I hope,
how would
I hope I've done that. I really do. You know what?
do you, do you think that so when you added the instrumentation to it, were you thinking, okay, I want to try and update this? I want it
Nope.
to sound like he might have
Nope.
meant
Nope.
it to
Nope.
be?
That only popped in my brain for a second. I said, no, these are Dad's songs and they're traditional country songs. I'm going to add my feeling as I play the instruments to the type of music that it is and play homage to his music. It's all about his music, nothing to do with me. I just am fortunate enough to have the ability to make it cheap enough and be able to do it, to play most of the instruments myself. You know what I mean? So,
And you knew him well, so you had a pretty good idea of
oh,
what he might have wanted to do with this.
yes. And even though I don't believe in ghosts or God or goblins or, what, devils, he was in the studio with me because I know him so well as I was working on the tunes. There was times when I could hear him in my ear, nope, that ain't working, or I could I could hear him making a drink because he was so happy.
So
But
it
the drum,
sounds like it was a very positive experience for you. What was it like to go through? How long did it take, and then how what was it like?
again, I can't give you an exact number of hours that I put into it. Um, because I started it several years ago, and I can't even remember exactly which year, but several years, at least 5 years. But I only play with music now that I'm older in the wintertime in my studio. So I've been producing different bands and my own stuff and doing some gigs here and there. So but it wasn't until 2 years ago that I had nothing else to do, and I just went boom, 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 and finished all the tunes up and got it all together.
And tell me about how you got the musicians together. Where did all that come from?
Well, Sandy, who sings most of the backup vocals on it, um, I know her from when I used to play with a just a classic rock tribute band, and we used to do lots of gigs a few years ago up here in Aurelia and Barrie and Huntsville, in Washago. I met her through she used to come to the jam spots sometimes, and I knew she was an amazing singer, so I asked her to come by, and she did. And you know what? She did 2 songs. I was like, okay, let's do a few more. And then on the last song of the song, Stop This Crying, and by no means is the last song. This is a great song. I really enjoyed performing on this because even though it's traditional country music, this song screams of like laid back, 3/4, 6/8 time Eagles.
I hear a little bit of Johnny Cash in there. I'm hearing the real country side of the Eagles, for
Yes. Oh
sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I think you're right about the lyrics too. Like these they seem to be very. I mean, it's a genre of music that's heartfelt anyway. But he certainly knows how to do that. Like they're pretty strong country lyrics. I mean,
Yeah.
today country music is almost like kind of like in some respects pop music, but it's definitely a standout standalone genre. But when
And
your
the way
father,
and the way it's recorded nowadays, they quantize all the music and
yeah,
they pitch control for all the singing. It's highly oh, computerized and edited
yeah,
to
yeah.
be the fakest, tightest it can ever be. You don't hear the raw musicianship. Sorry, I'm going on, but
No, 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 no. I mean, there's a lot of people who I think there seems to. I mean, there's a lot going on. There's generational change happening. There's technological change happening.
well, that's the
Uh,
big thing. You
and
tell
when you've got so much technological change, you're going to have a lot of generational change, and of course that impacts. It's impacting music in so many ways you can't even kind of keep up with it. But
oh yeah,
um,
yeah. Well, that's why we
yeah,
call this on the liner notes. We call it raw and real.
yeah.
It's raw and real. All it is musicians laying down their performances, and I just produce it and engineer it to put it out for people to hear. Right? There's nothing being manipulated. It's just a recording program recording what we all do. So now I need to kind of go back to what you were talking about before, the different musicians. So the other backup singer on Stop This Crying, and this is what I was trying to get to, Stop This Crying, is my new cousin, Dave Gonczol. And that's you. And look at his face. You can tell he's an old ugly Barry. No, he's a handsome devil like the rest of us.
That's
We're all
right.
devil. You know what? There's a few funny looking ones, but they're all handsome anyways. Either way.
That's a good way to put it. So, well,
But
I'll tell the story really quickly. But my daughter
yeah,
a few years
oh,
ago,
sorry.
maybe 4 or 5 years ago, wanted to do a DNA test and just for fun to see what her background was like 2,000 years ago. And of course, it didn't occur to me that me being her father, I was going to find some things out about me. But it was just sort of viewed as a fun thing until one day I get this letter in the mail from a woman who says, "You're my half brother." And so this is the kind of thing that can happen when you sign up for these DNA tests. I mean, it's good. It's a good thing,
Yeah.
so I found out I had a sister, and I was adopted at 2 months of age. And so the other side of it was, okay, well now I have to find my father's side, and your father was my uncle,
Yes. Yeah.
and
But
so
the
we're
younger
like half first cousins. Is that
we would be half first cousins, yes.
it?
Yeah,
So
that would be
that's
about Yeah.
So that's how you and I connected, and then you told me
Unless,
about the. Uh-huh.
unless your mother is somehow hooked up to my father somewhere, because you know what it was, the 60s, 50s, 70s. You never
I
know.
I think my new half sisters had enough shocks for a couple of years. I think we'll just leave. If that's true, we'll
Well,
just
the
leave it.
more shots, the better, man, especially when
Yeah.
the quad.
Give us something to do, eh?
Mm.
Um, and so and you told me about this, and I always just thought, what a great thing, what a great project to what a great way to make an album. And like you say, because you don't really expect people to, I mean, look, we all die, but no one sort of expects someone on short notice. Had he been ill?
Nope.
Yeah. So
Well,
it
you know
just,
what? I mean, he had high blood pressure. He had some, you know what? He was eating properly, but he didn't do a whole lot.
yeah.
So then they started renting this house, and he was doing a lot, and he had a massive heart attack in his
Oh
chair
my.
after supper. Yeah. So,
Yeah. So you don't
but
see it coming, but the
nope.
good news is that you did this, and so there must be a lot of family and friends and what about people who are near to him? Are they aware of this? Your family
So
is well aware.
so before I even let you hear it, I had to let my stepmother Kay Barry, my father's wife of over 30 years, hear it to make sure not only her as well as my stepsister Kim and my stepbrother Don, because they lived with him for 20 years. You know what? Like he knew him, they knew him just as much as I did. But Kay was most important because Kay was his biggest fan. And when he didn't know the words, she was there singing it always. Anyways, you could just look over her and she was singing the words. So, um, but yeah, I put it past her to make sure, and she says, "Yeah, it's good. It's nice and professional, and it sounds great." So I was happy with that. Because if not, then I'd have to ask her why, and then I'd have to figure out what I did wrong and go back and try to fix it. Because I was on a mission,
Yeah.
even though I only do it in the wintertime. In the wintertime, I'm on my mission, right?
So it must have been interesting for them to have these,
I don't know.
simple demos come to life.
I hope so. I hope so. I
Yeah.
don't. So not everybody's heard everything yet, but
How many songs are going to be on the release?
8 songs.
And is it going to be CD and streaming platforms?
Oh no, it's just streaming. I mean, if you want a
Yeah.
CD, I can burn one and mail you one. But you know what? People don't do CDs anymore.
No, no. So you're on all the major platforms.
We will be, yeah.
And when does this going to go online, do
I
you
don't
think?
have an exact release date yet, but it's going to be late November, beginning of December.
Okay. And
Because we still got some videos and some stuff. There's some radio stations that are interested as well as hearing it. Um, and after this interview, hopefully I don't blow it and we can use that to promote stuff and kind of get the story out.
um so
So I
so
didn't finish the story of how my cousin, David,
yeah.
backup singer in my band.
Yes.
I mean, on this project. Okay, you told your story how but as I had said earlier in part one, the there wasn't many of my family that played. But I knew there was some in there, but they didn't have any interest. Then you came along and was like, oh, you're just getting back into it from being here. I mean, you were into it lots when you're younger, but you were away from it for a long time. But you just started getting back into it. And you were sending me stuff that you were writing and recording. And I was sending you stuff, not only of my dad, but of my own music. And it's like, fuck, man, this guy is like, he can play. Even though he's just getting back into it, this guy can play, he can sing, he can record. You know what? And it was an exciting thing for me that you were able to. I'm going to tell, and I said to you before, the angelic, I hear your vocals on Stop This Crying, they're angelic. It's just,
Ah.
it's angel singing along with my dad.
Well, I think what I enjoyed about that was um, you've got a completed song and you want to add something to make it better. and you just don't want to put something in there for the sake of putting it in there.
Right.
And that was fun trying to do that. And it's almost like you're finding a little space in that sort of sonic palette that there isn't anything there, and yet it's sort of, hopefully, you try and make
It's
other things better.
totally not what I expected. I don't know I didn't really expect anything, but I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
When I
So you've got 8 songs, and they're going to be going streaming. And so you say you've got some radio stations that are
Well, I have
interested.
one in particular that likes to play new country music, new stuff,
Yeah.
new traditional country, I should say. They like hearing new artists. So yeah, I got a line on that. And Sandy, who's the other backup singer, she sings on mostly every other song. Oh, and I do sing backup on one song.
Which one is that?
I can't remember. I wanna hold you, I think. I wanna
Okay.
hold. I think that's the song.
So
But
what's your favorite?
Sandy's on there as well, and every other song. So she's on 6 songs. There's one song
Yeah.
you thought Dad didn't need any backups.
So how many musicians did you bring in for this?
So you just one other musician. Well, Don on bass, my Don Morrow,
Hmm?
my my stepbrother, my brother in arms, Don McCallan, steel slide, Sandy Clark on backup vocals, and David Gonczol on backup vocals.
And what did you play on
That's
the
it.
album?
I played acoustic guitars, 12 strings, bass, keyboards, piano, drums. And I guess yeah, everything else I played.
So you played the piano.
Oh yeah,
That sounded pretty good.
I love piano, man.
Yeah, you've been playing a while?
Since the first time I sat on a piano.
Wow.
My mother hated me for years because she always took lessons and she was never good at it. And even later in life, she took it. But she goes, "That Bobby, he just sits down and he plays. He doesn't even know what he's doing. He just plays." And that's what I used to do.
Well, I
Yeah.
thought the piano sounded pretty good on the songs.
Oh, thank you. You know
Yeah.
what? I am proud of the piano. I got into a zone a couple times on a couple songs, and when I listened back to it, I said, "Holy shit! I didn't know I could do that." Like I blew myself away.
So what's next with this? So you're going to release this, and
Oh yeah, and it's gonna be out there for people to listen to. It's not like I'm going on tour with my dad or anything. Well, unless somebody's got some money, we can do a hologram and shit. I'm okay. I could play all the instruments, and Dad can sing in the hologram and play guitar over in the corner.
yeah.
I think I'll take a walk tonight and try to clear my mind. While the night is cool, stars are bright, and dreams I've left behind. I'll clear the memories from my head before they take control, and try to lose this deep dark longing eating at my soul. I'm gonna walk right out of love with you back into the world. Leave behind this loneliness and longing for you, girl. Yes, I'll become a man again. I'll trace the clouds of blue. 'Cause tonight I'm gonna walk myself right out of love with you. The memories that I have of you are driving me insane. The love we shared, the wrong I've done, there's only me to blame. This autumn breeze should cool this flame of love I have in me, and I can start to live again, alone but oh so free. I'm gonna walk right out of love with you back into the world. behind the loneliness and longing for you, girl. Yes, I'll become a man again. I'll chase the clouds of blue. 'Cause tonight I'm gonna walk myself right out of love with you. I'm gonna walk right out of love with you, back into the world. Leave behind the loneliness and longing for you, girl. Yes, I'll become a man again. I'll chase the clouds of blue. 'Cause tonight I'm gonna walk myself right out of love with you. Tonight I'm gonna walk myself right out of love with you.